Hey, 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 what's going on, guys? How are you? It is the 121st episode on the Healthy Runner podcast, where we help you get stronger, run faster, and enjoy lifelong injury free running. And today, I have the pleasure of sharing the 126th running of the Boston Marathon recap with two of my friends. In today's episode, Shana Miller of Stiletto Running and our very own Healthy Runner Coach Lu will share their 2022 Boston Marathon experience with all of you. So, Shauna, thank you so much for coming back on the show to share your story.
Thanks for having me again. It's good to see you.
And Coach Lu, as always, it's always nice to see you. And thanks again for coming back on. He's got, for those not watching the video version right now, Coach Lu is shaking his Spike mascot unicorn doll that he got from the Boston Marathon. Now, is that something they do every single year, or was that just like a 2022 special?
Every year you have it in the expo.
All right. Every year in the expo. All right, guys. So today I want to know, do you want to run the Boston Marathon one day? Or do you have dreams, aspirations to run the Boston Marathon? I know I do. I might be 90 years old by the time I do, but I do have dreams and aspirations. Or do you want to just learn a little bit more about this iconic race and chasing the unicorn phenomena that you see out there on social media? And in this episode, really what you won't get or hear us talk about is how like CJ Albertson went out with guns ablazing again, aggressive for a second Boston Marathon in a row, or how Molly Seidel dropped out due to an injury that she's been battling. We are actually not going to cover the professional runner circuit that happened in Boston, because that's been done before. You can listen to that anywhere. And if you're listening to this video or this podcast, most likely you're not a professional runner anyway. So you are an everyday runner, and you either just got a BQ yourself and you're finding this episode, or you're striving for a BQ and you're out there just like hitting the pavement, and you're looking to maybe run the Boston Marathon one day. Maybe you're doing it, you didn't get a BQ, but you're doing it for an amazing cause, right? That you hold near and dear to your heart, and you're raising some amazing money, and you're like accomplishing the Boston Marathon. So that in of itself is a huge, huge accomplishment. So what we're going to be covering is really the Boston Marathon from folks like you and me. And that's what Shauna and Coach Lu is going to share with you, like their stories, their journey, how they got to this point in their running journey. And then, what is some of the reflective thoughts that they had after this iconic race. And, for those of you who are wondering who Shana Miller is, we had a great episode with Shana in episode 90, in which we really got into, her backstory on, how she got into running, how she became the mom boss behind the popular brand Stiletto Running, which has some amazing running clothes for women with style. And she really kind of got in depth into some of her backstory and some of her history as a runner. So I would highly recommend you check out that episode. It's in the show notes. It's episode 90 on the Healthy Runner podcast, to kind of get some of Shauna's really in-depth backstory. But Shauna, for our listeners, if you don't mind just doing a little dynamic warm-up here and give kind of the quick pitch of who you are, where you reside, and why you did run the Boston Marathon this year.
So I'm Shana Miller. I live in Middlebury, Connecticut, and I'm originally from the Boston area. I've been running this is my 11th year running, and Boston was my 10th marathon and my 3rd Boston Marathon. This Boston Marathon meant the most to me because this time I qualified. The other two I ran in the charity wave on an invitational bib. I had family members that were a sponsor at the time when I ran 2015 and 2016. And I started my Stiletto running apparel 6 years ago. So a mom to two, I almost said two teenagers, but my oldest just turned 20 this weekend.
Whoa, happy birthday.
Thank you. forget that I'm old enough to have a 20-year-old because sometimes I still think I'm 30. So do the math. Yeah. So, between a husband and the kids and running in the business, I'm running around sometimes with my head cut off.
Yes. No, you're definitely juggling it and you're doing it quite well, I must say. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that your running journey really, it's not like you've been running for 20 or 30 years, right? When did you start running again?
2011. So this June is the 11th year that I ran my first race, really.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's right. So we started running actually the same year. That's when I started running as well. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, so just kind of put some context to the story here. Shana kind of started running later in life. She ran 10 marathons. She ran 3 Boston. So this was the first one that she had qualified for, kind of leading up there. And then Coach Lu, if you don't mind giving us your brief background, I know you've been on the podcast many times before, with the latest being episode 115. There we go. Episode 115, as well as episode 95, in which Coach Lu really shared kind of a deep dive on the Boston Marathon and kind of preparation and some great tips on how to actually execute the course itself. So if you guys are listening to this, then you'll definitely want to check out episode 95 on the Healthy Runner podcast, in which Coach Lu got into that. But Coach Lu, just give us kind of your brief, really rundown of kind of your running journey again, please.
Okay, so I start actually even later. I start my first race 2017, and I run 1 marathon per year, a few more this year, but this is my second Boston Marathon. The first one is last year in fall, only 6 months apart, and 6 marathon overall. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a run coach and a scientist too. Yeah, so I just like running the community. I like the running community. I'm one of the coach in the Healthy Runner group.
Yes, and he's doing an amazing job coaching some athletes. And so, okay, so to put it in perspective, Lou, you've only really been running 5 years, which is pretty amazing, what you've accomplished in 5 years. So Sean has been running 11, Lou's been running 5. Sean has 10 marathons. Lou has 6, right? Is that what you said, Lou?
Yes.
6 marathons. Okay. So just giving you guys some context again, you might be in a similar situation to Lou and Shauna. And I'm sure as we go along, a lot of their kind of reflective thoughts might be helpful for you if you are running Boston in the near future, or perhaps 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So some things that may help you, on your running journey as you work your way, hopefully to the streets of Boston and all of those hills there. So yeah, let's get into kind of previous Boston Marathon experience. So we'll go kind of ladies first. So Shauna, you mentioned you've done 2 Bostons before this one. So you did those for kind of charity, right? And you raised some great money. Can you just share a little bit about kind of like how did those races go in your mind, from maybe like a running standpoint? And then, what was like your take home, messages for those races? And if you want to share times that you ran for those races, feel free to do that as well.
So, 2015 was my first Boston, and it was also my 3rd marathon.
Okay.
Third. I think it was my 3rd marathon. And the people will say it can take, I know people that have done 30 marathons and they're still learning. The marathon is that kind of distance that I think you learn with every single one. And even though it was my 3rd and I thought I was experienced, having already run 2, that was far from the case, especially going into the Boston Marathon course. And growing up around there and spectating for many years, I thought I knew what to expect. It's quite the course. The downhill for the first 15 and a half miles definitely takes a toll on your legs. And I was not prepared for that first time. And I had mentioned this on our previous podcast. My training was same pace all the time, just putting in the miles. So I had never incorporated any speed work or tempo marathon pace runs or anything like that. It was just, for me, the goal was finishing, really. In 2015, the weather was 45 degrees and pouring rain. So it was freezing.
Wow.
It was not a good day weather-wise. I do tend to do well when it's cold. So although I couldn't feel my hands, I at the time had a good race, and I felt really good really the whole time, other than my frozen hands and needing volunteers to open up my fuel for me.
Right.
And like I said, it was my first Boston. I'm from Boston, so everything about it was amazing.
Right.
The following year I went back.
Wait, hold on. So for that first experience, did you cramp up at all, or like, did you finish? Wow. Yeah, that's impressive.
Finished. I think my time was a 4:31 and my PR was a 4:28. So I was happy.
That's really good considering the weather and the course. That's really good.
Same time that I had been running. And I knew how hard the course was going to be. So I had no expectations really for time. But then I went back in 2016 and I had hoped to do better. But same thing, I wasn't training any differently. So looking back now, I think obviously I couldn't do better. I wasn't training any differently. But 2016 was 80 degrees and it was a walk fest from literally mile 14 to the finish. Like my only goal was at that point to just get to the finish line. Super hot, super dehydrated. And to this day, my slowest marathon to date, I don't even remember. I think it was like a 5 or a 4:55 or something. Honestly, I think I wiped that marathon out of my brain. It was one of the hardest days behind Chicago that I ran in October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where you got like chased by bees and stung by bees.
Was, throwing everything up at mile 19 in Chicago. And I mean, crazy enough, my time was still okay.
Yeah, that was super humid, right? That day?
Yeah. It was like 70 when I started, when I finished, and the humidity was high. And but between that and Boston 2016, those were two of my hardest, most miserable races. So yeah, It was interesting between 15 and 16, how the cold weather, and even though it was pouring rain, I was smiling. I was happy.
Right. Right.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Not
heat and humidity definitely is like the worst thing for a marathon, by far. And Coach Lu, what was your first experience? So that was in 2021, the only year, hopefully at time of this recording, someone listens to this in 10 years from now, it will be the only year ever that it's run in October or in the fall. So you ran it in the fall in 2021 after it was rescheduled. And how was your experience?
That was awesome. Actually, I was lucky because I signed up for the virtual, and then they release more. They have more spots, so I was able to get in.
That's right. I forgot about that. That like you technically weren't going to be doing the marathon, and then you wound up getting. Okay, cool. That's right. I forgot that story.
Yeah, and I'm on the other side of the spectrum, Shana. I like heat. I don't love that, but then compared with freezing cold, I can bear with it. So especially for fall race, you are suffering in summer, then suddenly in fall it get colder, and that's just so good. So I ran Boston, and I got a PR, and almost 3 minutes PR, 2 minutes and a half, and I broke 3 hours in that Boston, and I was super happy, and I was totally enjoy the race, and I pushed really hard. When after everyone hate the rolling hills in Newton, but afterwards, after the hills, I picked up the pace and dashed through the end. I was thinking of the Healthy Runner group and the support, so that really helped me push through.
Yeah. So you had like I would say is not your typical first Boston Marathon experience. I think, at least from stories I've heard of others, it sounds like you had like a magical, really magical day in getting a, marathon PR on such a hard course, getting sub 3. So just if anyone's listening to this after their first and they're like, hey, I didn't do that, like, what's wrong with me? I would say those results are typical of most people who, tackle the Boston Marathon for the first time. So yeah, let's get to kind of this training block. Shana, how did your training go? Like, we all know, you both live in Connecticut. So anyone who is in a cold weather city or, residents, it is freaking hard to train in January, February. Like, it's cold. We got snow, we got sleet, we got freezing rain, we got ice, we got, all these things that happen. How did this training block go for you, Shauna?
Well, it started well until I got COVID the second week of January.
That's right.
So I started my training really like end of December, and then within a few weeks got COVID. And I was pretty sick for like 3 weeks. So I didn't run at all for 3 weeks. And then I did start running and was back to running for like another 2 weeks, but really short, easy runs. I mean, I was doing like 3 or 4 days, 3 miles. So like I was only doing 12 miles a week for a couple of weeks after that. So I really missed 5 weeks of this training cycle. And even when I did start running after those 5 weeks, like really picking up the miles and starting to incorporate my speed work, it still took another like 2 or 3 weeks to really kind of start feeling like myself. So kind of feel like I only had like a 6 or 7 week good training block for this. And then ended up like the last few weeks really back where I was when I had trained for Chicago in the fall. So I felt good and I felt strong and I felt ready. And I think if it was any other marathon other than Boston, I really, truly think I was ready for a PR. But 50, 55 degrees is on the warmer side for me. And I felt great up until maybe 19 or so. And the dehydration started setting in.
Okay, wait, hold on. Before we get to the actual race, I want to tease this a little bit. I want you to give away all the goods here.
Yeah. The training. So I think that training in the winter, and you were saying, we had definitely a doozy of a winter with really cold temperatures. We had, I think, more ice and sleet than snow accumulation.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So that made it harder because I did have more treadmill runs than I normally would I never train on a treadmill except in those conditions. So I did have a handful of treadmill runs, and I like running in the cold. So going from the cold to even 50 degrees is, a little bit too warm for me. But so the training block, had I not gotten COVID in January, I think it would have been even better, but I still felt like it was, for what it was, I still felt like it was a good, solid training block.
Yeah. And I'm just so happy that you were able to bounce back from that. Cause I remember actually you and I grabbing coffee and tea right after that, when you weren't running for a couple of weeks. And yeah, I was worried for you to be able to, build up. And like, I'm just so happy that you felt strong toward the end and that your fitness was at where you were training for Chicago in the fall. So that's great that you were able to kind of, your body was able to kind of get back into the swing of things and respond to the training. And I think probably for this year, for 2022, from what I hear, it was probably really the humidity, right? That was because that was, I think, about 70%, that wound up getting, the heat, the 55 degrees or 58 degrees felt hotter because there was some humidity in the air, from at least some of the runners that I've heard from. So I'm sure that definitely was a huge change to the system, because we've had literally zero humidity, right? Here in Connecticut, during all of your training. And Coach Lu, how did your training block go this winter?
This is my first time training in winter, and it's so hard. Well, I do keep training, keep running in winter before, but speed work in the cold air just crazy, because the lung doesn't like cold and dry air, and it hurts. It hurts. And I was struggling, but luckily I have local friends, and I actually ran with Shana once. So yeah, that the local friends really kept me going. And I have some local friends who run track workout with me, and even though we are doing different track workouts, someone's there. And actually, I literally say, if I pass out, call 911. It's just so hard. I was struggling definitely, but then once it gets somewhat warmer and my fitness come back, and I actually got a few PRs, so I was in a very good shape towards Boston.
Okay.
But it was hard.
You were set up. Yeah, you put the hard work in. It wasn't easy by any means, but you felt like going into the race, you were kind of set up for success. Your fitness was there. You got the training done. Despite it being very hard, you got it done. And then, let's talk about like the taper crazies. And Shana, for those that don't follow Stiletto Running on Instagram, you guys have to start following. Shana makes some amazing reels. She had some really funny ones during taper time, taking like food out of the fridge. I was just like cracking up. I just love your reels. How did, the taper crazies go for you? How do you feel like, the week leading up to Boston, was there like super nervous, excited? Do you like the taper and like not running, or does it like really make you nervous not running as much?
All of the above. I love the taper because, after a training block for a marathon, you're tired physically, mentally, so I love that downtime, just sleeping a little bit more and kind of catching up on things that I wasn't able to catch up on because a 20-mile run takes up, the whole day, between the run and all the eating you do and all the stretching and the rolling. And then you just want to sit and lay on the couch. So I love the taper for that aspect. But as the taper gets closer to race week, and now you're in that race week mode, the excitement and the nerves take over. Like I am like crazy cuckoo. Like I really, I get race anxiety for any distance. You could tell me to go do a 1 mile race, and I would be just as nervous for a 1 mile race as I am for a marathon. Doesn't matter. So but the excitement for Boston was like the most excited I think I've ever been, more so for this one than for the other two that I ran. There was just, I think because it was so long in the making, my qualifying time was October of 2019. So I've been waiting for 2.5 years for this race week.
Right. So, we didn't mention that earlier. That's right. Yeah. You qualified before the pandemic, and then it was delayed. So this is like 2.5 years in the making, all that training and all that like anticipation.
So the taper was a little weird this time because the excitement was just over the top. And I couldn't wait for it to get here, but I didn't want it to end either. So it was kind of like that bittersweet taper. And I enjoy marathon training. So there's something about the training process that I really enjoy. So there's also that, like, as much as I look forward to the taper and to run less and just get some more rest, I miss those long runs and the hard workouts, and I really enjoy it.
What do you, no, that's definitely interesting. Cause I don't know if everyone would say that, right? So what do you think it is that you enjoy most about it?
I don't know. I like the challenge. Like, I like, I run with a coach, or not with, but I'm trained by a coach, and I get excited every week to see what she's putting on the calendar for me. And, sometimes I look at it and I freak out and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how she thinks I'm capable of doing this workout. But then I love to see if I can do it. And, sometimes I can't, and it's okay, but I love trying. And sometimes when I do it and I'm able to hit the paces that are prescribed, it's like, I don't know, you feel like you're on top of the world.
Right.
I don't know. I kind of like an adrenaline junkie, which I'm so not an adrenaline, like, I don't know. I'm not like a thrill seeker. Like the
Right.
about, like, that's not for me. So I guess maybe this is like my form of like adrenaline. I don't know.
How about you, Coach Lou? How was your taper and kind of leading into the race?
It's much needed taper because I was struggling with pull my tendon every once in a while, get some minor injuries along the way, and I just can't wait to rest it. And took some massage and take care of these issues. I don't feel too much anxiety, luckily, because I guess I have quite a few athletes working with me, so I was worrying about them more than myself. Yeah, and I didn't even feel it until the very last minute when I actually started running. Then I started worry about myself. So I don't have that taper taper anxiety, but I do enjoy it because it's time to recover from those little injuries.
Yeah, and I think many people I'm sure could relate to that one. Just having some, aches and pains or niggles, those across the pond would call. I think a lot of people have that. And yeah, you were definitely busy. It probably was like a good thing, right? To have that distraction, because the week before that was the Cheshire Half Marathon that you guys remember, or 2 weeks before, 1 week before. And you were coaching, a bunch of our athletes for the half marathon. And then you had athletes who were running Boston at the same time. So sometimes that could be a good distraction, right? Where you're not, kind of really just focusing on yourself and like your race. So you had some things to distract you, which was good. And yeah, I gotta give a shout out to our friends here on the live, in our healthy runner community. A lot of your athletes are hopping on here. Francisco's here, Kristen's here. Kristen says, yay, Shana. And she says, what's that like, looking at the coach's plan and freaking out, asking for a friend, LOL. And Christy, what's going on? Christy's a newbie in our coaching program. She has no clue, but she says could possibly mean. So thanks for joining, Christy. We're excited to begin to work with you, and we're looking forward to seeing you excel in your running goals. Holly's also here. Thanks for joining. Sandra's here. Coach Kat's here. Kathleen, what's going on? Brian's here. Don's here. Coach Whitney's here. Says, yay. Hi, friends. Don is here. Thanks for joining. Doug, what's going on? How are you? And then the other Kristen Green in our program is here as well. And Sue is here. Sue, thanks for joining in our program. So thank you guys for hopping here on the live. And then we got more people. You guys must be popular. Pam's here. She says, congratulations, Shana and Lu. And Jean is here. What's going on, Jean? How you guys doing? Wow, we got a lot of friends here on the live. This is awesome. All right. So we're kind of talking about taper time. You guys did, it sounds like, really well with that, honestly. And then let's get into kind of, first off, where did you guys stay? Did you guys stay overnight? How many nights did you stay before the race? Shauna, let's start with you.
So I went into Boston on Friday morning-ish. Like I said, I'm from Boston, so I have all my family there. So I stayed at my sister's. She lives right in the city. And I
Perfect.
there from Friday to Tuesday. She couldn't get rid of me. And my brother-in-law also ran. So
Right. Okay.
it was nice to, be there together and do the whole Boston weekend extravaganza together. So
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like you had a teammate. That's cool.
yeah,
Very cool.
he was only like an hour ahead of the race.
That's great though. And then Lou, how many days in advance did you head up to Boston?
I went there on Saturday and then hang out. I do have friends from this Spain running group, a local running group in
Mhm.
Boston Endurance Nerds. So I hang out with people there, and after Monday, I spent one extra day hanging out with friends.
Very nice. So you stayed with friends. You went up Saturday with the Ben running group. Awesome. All right. So you get up there extra days, right? Like that's kind of key. It seems like, right? You pretty much want to get there, experience the weekend, settle in. This isn't a race you like drive up the morning of. Certainly not the morning of, but even the day before, right? That's kind of tough to kind of go up to Boston or fly into Boston on that Sunday, I would imagine. Okay, so let's get to the epic Marathon Monday, Patriots Day. For those that don't know, it's a holiday in Boston area. I had no clue what Patriots Day was growing up in Long Island, New York. But I learned from friends running the Boston Marathon as I've been here in Connecticut. So Patriots Day, Marathon Monday, pre-race. Shauna, take us through what that looked like for you.
So the nice thing about Boston, or the bad thing about Boston, is it's a later start. So unlike some marathons that have a 7 a.m. start, you're not up at 4 a.m., which is nice. At least you can get kind of a normal night's sleep if you can sleep the night before a marathon. So my sister drove me over to the Boston Commons where the runners get the buses to go out to Hopkinton. So that made it nice and easy for me, not having to depend on public transportation. And I met with Kristen. She's here.
Nice.
And then another friend, my friend Katie. And so we were all in the same wave. So we were able to get on the same bus together and sit together on the bus, and kind of helped ease the nerves a little bit, having some friends with me. And then you have I think it's like a 50-minute ride on the bus out to Hopkinton. And something that I noticed was different from the last two times I ran. Last time we got to the athletes village and we were sitting around, we had a long time before the start. This time we got dropped off and we waited in line for the porta potties, and within minutes they were calling our wave to get into the corral to start. So I was actually glad, because that extra sitting around is kind of nerve-wracking for me. But
right.
So it was, quicker. I know Lou will have a different scenario with his October, what happened in October, because they didn't have the waiting around. They rolling start in October. So I'll be curious to see what he liked better between each marathon. And then we were in the corrals, and kind of just went off pretty quickly.
So do you warm up at all? Do you ever warm up before a marathon?
I do some dynamic, just leg swings and some skips and stuff but I don't before a half marathon, I'll go and run for 10-15 minutes before, but with a marathon, I use those first couple of miles and generally try to start slow for the first couple of miles.
Now, speaking from the point of view of someone who's never run a huge marathon like this, is that done in the corral, or do you have to do that before you go into your corral?
Before you go into the corral.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I actually did them in my sister's apartment, because I knew once I got to the village and, wanted to hit the porta potty a couple of times, and everybody around, and I knew I'd run into people I knew, and I was I'm never going to get it done there. So I was I'm just going to do my little 10-minute dynamic up in the apartment. So.
And then what was your pre-run fuel? Like, did you bring stuff with you? Do you have it in the village or on the bus? How's that work out?
Yeah, so both, because my start time was 10:50. So, I was up at 6:45. So basically I had 2 meals before I started. I woke up and had an English muffin and a banana, and then and hydration, salt, electrolytes. And then on the bus, I ate a bagel and another banana and kept sipping my electrolyte drink and sips of water. So yeah, I was all carved up.
All right. Awesome. You were getting in that nutrition. And then Coach Lu, yeah, how about you? What did your pre-race Marathon Monday look like?
So I actually pre-carb load the night before and a few days before. And then Monday, because there's so many hours before you actually before breakfast and between breakfast and you actually start, I can have a full breakfast with bagel and bread, just carbs. And I brought UCAN bar with me, and it turns out to be good. And I brought e-gels with me. And in the corral, yes, last year with Rolling Star, you go there, you don't go to Athletes Village, you just go directly to the start line, and you can start whenever you want. And I love it.
Yeah.
This year, Athletes Village, I was chatting with friends that I met virtually, say, oh, let's meet at Athletes Village. But then when there is crazy, it's packed. It's like a farmer's market. the porta potty line is like 20 minutes. It's just insane.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I mean, fortunately, I'm in wave 1, so I go start early, and once you get in, there's still so from Athletic Village to the start area, there's still like 0.6 miles. So I get into that when I exit the village, then you go near the corral before you actually start. Well, before you actually go into the corral, there's a few porta potties there, and there's a lot less line. So I did there, and I jog near the porta potties, and people do.
There you go. Yeah. I would imagine so.
I definitely need to warm up. I need like 10 minutes at least to warm up. So I did dynamic warm up and jogging around the porta potties.
Okay, so it is possible. Like, it is possible if you're a person who really feels like, hey, I got to get my body a little bit, circulation here and warming up. You could do it. Like, there's not like a big open space or anything, but it can be done. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So all right. So now the race starts, and this was like super exciting for us. Those of you who are here on the live, I'd be interested. How many of you guys were tracking? Were you guys like stalkers tracking? I know Coach Whitney and I were like literally exchanging texts like every couple of minutes. I had about 8 or 9 people I was following. The app is super cool, by the way. This was my first time using the app. I've done it like on my desktop before, and you like see the little person, on the map, but the app was like, I was impressed. It was pretty cool. It was like literally we could see all the analytics. We could see paces, projections, like it was pretty cool. Then you could just like swipe left to see, a different friend of yours. You get notifications like when you start, you get notifications when you hit the halfway mark. So it was like my phone's going off. I'm like, oh, cool. Lou's halfway done. Awesome. And then it was like fun. It was like the most fun I've ever had. Like, I love spectating races, but this, for like not actually being at the race, like having that app and getting these notifications was like exciting. Or like, oh, what's going on? It was pretty exciting. I don't know if everyone felt that way, but I loved it. And I just love like being able to track you guys and see how you were doing. It was super exciting. So let's get kind of into the race itself. Shana, what are your reflective? You've had a week now. So at the time of this recording, we're 1 week after your marathon performance? You know, I'm sure I've been seeing your post. You've been reflecting a lot. Yeah. How do you think the race went for you in general?
Um, Overall, I had a great race. I started conservatively the first few miles, and then I just locked into my pace, the pace that I had when I got my BQ. And I didn't have a goal going into this. I knew I wasn't going to PR. It wasn't a PR course for me. Or the weather. I know 50 degrees, 55 with sun. I mean, there were no clouds and there's no shade cover on this course. So I knew it was going to be on the warmer side for me. You know, in the back of my mind, I was hoping to get another qualifying time. Not necessarily a BQ, but would have been nice. But I went with how I felt, and I also knew I wanted to feel good. I didn't want to be in that pain cave. I didn't want to be sick like I was in Chicago in October. I wanted to enjoy all 26.2 miles as like a victory lap for my qualifying to get there. But that being said, I wanted to run strong. I didn't want to have the horrible race I had in 2016 there. I wanted a decent finish time. So I took it out slow for the first 10K and said, if I feel good, I'll, keep trying to pick it up. And everybody says you have to start slow there because it is a net descent downhill. And even though I had run this 2 times before, I didn't really remember it. And as I was running, I'm like, yep, this is why I have to stay slow because I know when I get to those hills, I'm going to need it. So yeah, I mean, I felt really good and I was really on pace for another BQ until almost mile 18. And then the first 2 hills, I felt good and was able to pick it up again because they're down in between the 4 Newton hills. And I was able to pick it up again. And then by going up the 3rd hill, my quads were on fire. Like that downhill running, I mean, and I really thought I trained properly and I did. I did a lot of uphill running. I did a lot of downhill running. I did a lot of downhill repeats and, but my legs were clearly not ready for those, that 16 miles of downhill. So yeah, my quads were killing. And then by the time I peaked, Heartbreak Hill around mile 21, my calves started cramping so badly, to the point, like I had to walk for like 30 seconds until they would loosen up enough so I could run. And so that's pretty much how the last 5 miles went. My stomach was like starting to get a little unsettled. I knew that was dehydration setting in. So I try, and I never drink Gatorade during a race ever. And I was just so nervous about what happened in Chicago. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take little sips at each water, aid station for the next 5 miles, just to make sure I wasn't going to cramp up and not be able to finish. So at that point I just wanted to finish and I wanted to finish with a smile on my face. I didn't be so miserable. So, yeah, I ended up having to run the last 5 miles and, it was a course PR. It was my best Boston. And
that's unbelievable,
yeah,
honestly.
out of my 10 marathons, I think it was my 3rd or 4th fastest. So I have nothing bad to say about it other than, yeah, I knew I was trained and I was in PR shape, but that wasn't my intent for Boston. So I have to keep,
Exactly.
pulling again and saying I had a great race in Boston and I enjoyed every single mile. Like I can't be upset about it.
Right. And I think that is such a hard thing for us as runners, right? Because there is a lot of time goals that we set, and especially training for this race, you're hitting specific pace goals for workouts, like the workouts that you mentioned, right? So we do get somewhat fixated on the numbers. And I think it is hard to come to that point where you are. And I really felt that like from your posts and everything. And I know it's like genuine, kind of what you're talking about is really having that, you know, bigger picture view, right? And just realizing that, hey, every single time I go out there and run a marathon, I'm not going to PR. And just with everything with the pandemic and the delay and, you know, you just really starting your running journey 11 years ago and being able to qualify for Boston is like a huge accomplishment, right? And to be able to, you know, run this course for your third time in your fastest that you've ever done it and be able to finish with a smile. Like I've seen those pictures. I saw your race pictures, right? You had a smile and like just to be able to like take it in and take in the environment. I think it's just great, honestly. And that needs to be celebrated. And you need to celebrate that because I think that's so important for you as a runner in your running journey to stop, smell the roses, right? We work so hard. We set up these hard training cycles. And if we're always looking at like, what if, what could have been, or the next time I do this, I'm going to run it faster, then like we're never appreciating, right? Like the accomplishment, because you've accomplished like amazing feat. So I love that you're taking that in, and because it's important. It really is. And anyone who's listening to this, if you ran Boston or if you ran any marathon, any half marathon, same thing to you. I think sometimes we get caught up in that and like the next challenge and the next challenge. And for like both of you, I know you guys, well, you're kind of like me. It's kind of like you want that next challenge. Like it seems like life, right? You should go upstairs and you keep climbing the stairs and you want that next challenge. But, and I'm starting to see this myself, is just, you know, taking that moment and just enjoying the journey, right? Like we need to enjoy the journey, because then when you look back, you're never going to be like, oh, I wish I just like trained harder and moved faster and never like took anything in, right? You're going to be like, oh, I wish I could have paused that moment for like ever.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So
I
yeah,
wanted moment. I wanted to remember Boston the way I'm remembering it, like everything about it, like the weekend and the morning of the race and during the race and after the race and even a week later. Like I didn't want to be so upset and miserable, you know, with anything that happened. So yeah, sometimes you have to change perspective and put the goal somewhere else. You know, I knew that I had plans for fall for a PR, so that wasn't my plan here.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Perfect. I love it. And just, you know, thinking about that, I just came back from a weekend in Philly, a little weekend getaway from my daughter's volleyball tournament. And this was the first time ever that I've literally spent, you know, more than 5 hours alone. Like we'll do like date dinners, you know, here and there, but it's like 4 or 5 hours. Maybe we do dinner and a movie, where I take one of the girls, you know, out on a little date. And this was a whole weekend because my younger daughter had a volleyball tournament in Providence. So it was like divide and conquer. My wife is with the younger one in Providence. Olivia and I went to Philly and literally spent like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like 4 straight days nonstop together. And like the most amazing time, you know, with her, and like just thinking about like all those moments and memories that we had together at the Rocky statue, right? You know, eating, you know, trying different Philly cheesesteak places, and like just I just want to like savor that, right? And then like totally non-running related, but just thinking like life in general, right? And like those moments that we're gonna remember, like you're gonna remember this Boston Marathon 2022 for years to come. So just being able to like take all of that in and really like enjoy it and let it sink in a little bit more, you know, is great. And yeah, Coach Lu, let's get to your race itself. How did your race go? You followed. So for those that don't know, like Coach Lu has shared multiple times on the podcast in his previous episodes, his Boston Marathon prep. And then we actually did an episode on pacing for your race. and he's got a whole strategy he shared with us. Many of our athletes have implemented it and have succeeded. So I guess my first question to you is, did you follow your own advice? Did you follow the pacing strategy that you believe in?
Actually, I did. I did.
Nice. All right. So you followed, you practiced what you preached, and you didn't go out too hard in the first 3 miles.
Right. So I guess I'm in a I'm in a shape to PR, and the weather is better than last year, so I was pretty confident I'm going to PR. But I think the thing that I'm missing a little bit is the mental, because I was enjoying too much. I wasn't in the, if you can see the people in the eyes, if they go up for a race, they are going for it. I wasn't. I didn't realize I'm racing until I actually start. So I guess I didn't have that strong will to like PR and do whatever, but I was enjoying it. So, in every race, you start the national anthem, and then there are helicopters flying by, and then everyone claps. It's just amazing. And then the crowd, I was totally enjoying the crowd, and people have their hand there so you can clap. Especially those little kids. I hear story that some kids they see that they may become a runner later. So I try to clap whenever I can.
Yep.
And totally enjoying the crowd. It's just amazing. It's a whole city's like party. So I was
A big
enjoying
party.
it.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
were taking it in. You were enjoying that party.
Yes, and I was very strict of keeping the first 3 miles slow, like 20 seconds slower than my goal pace. For who's not familiar with Boston course, the first mile is like really steep downhill, and everyone's going out fast. It's really hard to control it. But I know if you go too fast, then you're gonna have problems later in the heartbreak hills, especially after the heartbreak hills, because the quads are just beaten up. So I was very, I'm very strict in that, and everything is on track. The first half downhill, I controlled the pace. It's actually 20 seconds slower than my last 4 marathon. So I was very strict. But I guess there's something I missed a little bit. One is that mentally I wasn't that strong to get a PR. Others that there's this little thing I probably tied my shoelace too tight. So I start to feel it late towards the race. And I mean, at close to mile 20, if you untie it and then do that, maybe it doesn't justify the time to do this. So I just try to bear it and keep going. But then, yeah, I mean, the hills, 17 to 21, the rolling hills, that's also when the wind start to get stronger. The uphills combined with wind is not the best combination.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's what I heard from a lot of people who ran the race, that the hills obviously are the toughest part of the course, but the wind that they felt running those hills made it even more challenging.
Right. But it was fine. Everything is planned. I tracked the weather report. But the other thing is that because I wasn't that mentally strong, I was taking it a little too easy for the first 20 miles. And after the 21 miles, when I do speed up, I did speed up according to my plan, but I wasn't going for it. And then later I see, I'm not gonna PR. So I slow down and then start just to finish to enjoy it. However, towards the end, when you go back to Boston, the crowd just amazing. I was about to just go away and have fun, but then the crowd just keep pushing, so I still pick up my pace and run my fastest mile towards the end. So I was having fun, but wasn't pushing too hard. I probably didn't get my mental ready.
Yep.
This time, but I totally enjoyed it.
Well, I must say though, from all the graphs that I saw on like everyone I was tracking on the apps, You're like changing paces for those hills was like ridiculous. You had like these huge spikes. I was like, man, this guy is like running super fast at like mile 25 or, even earlier in the 20s. I was like, wow, this guy is like got some strength at the end of this race. You like, you weren't like packing it in. So you definitely had some in the tank, it looked like, from some of your paces there. But so, in reflection, it sounds like, you're next time you go out, you felt like the training was there, your fitness was there, just maybe mentally, just kind of, yeah, if your goal is a PR, just really dialing in the mental side and kind of getting in the zone, so to speak, it sounds like. Okay. All right. And then what about post race, Shauna? What did you feel? How did that all go? How did you wind up feeling? Like, I know you mentioned you were getting some cramping. Were your muscles really painful, like later that evening, the next day? Did it feel any different than how you felt after any of your other, marathons that you've run?
Yeah, my legs were the most sore after this one, for sure.
Wow.
My especially, yeah. And I was thankful that I stayed at my sister's until Tuesday because they're in an apartment with elevators in the building. So I didn't have to deal with the stairs until I got home Tuesday night. So walking upstairs was fine, but going down was not pretty. Yeah, my quads were killing me, and my left calf really, it still a little tight. That was the one that was really cramping badly. And then at the finish line, the walk to get your medal, and then after, it's just a long walk. And when I got my medal and leaned over for the volunteer to put it on my head, like, how when you lean over, your leg kind of stretches behind you, my calf cramped so badly, it like buckled under me and I fell to the ground. And it was horrible. It was the worst
Oh my
pain.
goodness.
But before I could even I was like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And the volunteer, I don't even know what she said, but before I knew it, there was a wheelchair like in my back. And I was like, what the heck? So yeah, so the medics and the volunteers are amazing in Boston. Yeah, they scooped me up and she was like, you're dehydrated, you're salty, I'm going to bring you to the medical tent. Within 2 seconds, she was rushing me to the medical, but I felt fine. Like I said, I felt great the entire race. So that was frustrating with the cramping because I've never had it happen during a race before. Yeah, so she swooped me to the medical tent and had me drinking, electrolytes. And as soon as it loosened up and I could put weight back on my leg, like 15 minutes, I walked out. And yeah, my quads were my biggest complaint for 3 days after. But other than that, I felt good. I didn't feel tired. I don't know. I think I was just on such adrenaline for a couple of days. I really didn't feel that. I don't know. Like I said, I definitely could have run harder for sure. Had the cramping not been an issue because I felt good. So I didn't feel that tired feeling that I think I've felt after some marathons.
Yep. Okay.
That's where I say my training was there. I was
right.
ready, so.
Right. Yeah. And besides the electrolytes, do you do any salt tabs or anything like that during your run?
I take salt every couple of miles. But even that wasn't enough because like I said, I started sipping Gatorade at mile 21 because I was kind of like, okay, this isn't cutting it. And something to get these cramps to go away. So, and I salt load for 3 days before a race. I drink noon and so many different electrolyte things for 3 days up to a race, and I use the salt shaker more. I eat pickles.
Yeah. You do it all.
Yeah. I've had issues with my sodium levels being super low that the doctor has made me come back to retest. So I do know I've had that issue, and need to figure out what to do during races with the dehydration issue, because I feel like no matter how much salt I'm taking in, I'm not retaining it.
Right.
And yes, it was warm, but it wasn't so warm that I was sweating so much that I was losing it,
Right.
So,
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then Lou, how was your recovery after? How was it compared to, I guess, the fall?
I think, I guess I didn't cardio. Cardio wise, I wasn't pushing that hard, but my feet, my feet hurt because the shoe was tight and I was cramping. I was limping. I didn't cramp. I was limping. But cardio wise, it's fine. I just feel super hungry.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing that my mental wasn't quite there, because after my run, I was all right. I didn't hit my goal, but then I quickly start. I need to check my athletes how they are doing.
Yeah.
So I pull the app and then see, people are doing this. Oh, they are approaching the end, so maybe I'll see them. So I was quickly distracted again.
Yep. Okay. All right. And
Yeah,
a week later, are you back to running? When did you go for your first run after the race?
4 days after.
Okay. All right. And then Shana, I think you posted today, right? Was today your first run back? So a week later.
First run.
Okay.
Yep. 3 miles.
Yep.
My leg felt good, but that calf is like, it almost feels like it's bruised a little bit. Like I think the cramp is still, I don't know.
Yeah, you might have some kind of deep trigger points in that calf that need to be released.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Okay. All right. And then I guess if you were to share kind of lessons learned, either from this race or just a collective body of, multiple Bostons that you guys have done, what would that be, Shana?
Probably get your nutrition and fueling down for, I guess for any marathon, but I think Boston is such a different course because you need that fueling for that second, not even the second half, the last quarter of the race is, people have said Boston really doesn't start until mile 20. And they say that about marathons in general, but
right.
that's where it is, coming up off the hills in Newton. That's where you need all of it. Yeah.
All right. So next year I will be sitting like on a corner after the hills with like a huge salt shaker for you.
I won't be there because 2023, but there for 2024. So
all right, there we go. I'll be there. I'll be there for you, cheering you on 2024. It's in recording now.
That's my goal.
Awesome. And then Lou, any lessons learned for you?
I guess mental is very important. We even during training, like there are some days that single digit day, and then the feeling feels like minus sub-zero Fahrenheit, not Celsius. And I just went out for easy run because you don't know what the race day will be like, right? So you have this mental training that's gonna be helpful. And for the quads, strength training is a key. So I keep strength training, and my muscles are fine, and the eccentric phase especially. So that's
yeah, we kind of highlighted that in your Boston episode last time about the eccentric quad strengthening. And I would definitely agree from a physical therapist and coaching standpoint that would be something to really focus on, is that slow lowering for whether it's a step down exercise, a single leg squat. We talked strength training last episode with our friend Scott. So yeah, I would definitely make sure that those quads are strong for those hills. All right.
Especially for Boston, start slow, almost like most first-time Boston runners failed because you start too fast. When it's downhill and then the adrenaline is pumping, everyone's going fast. It's just hard to keep slow. It requires a huge self-discipline to start slow. Last year, when it's rolling start, there's not many people pushing you. This time, people are pushing you at the same pace. It's super hard. So I just went all the way to the side. So let them go, and I stay on my own pace.
Yep. Okay. All right. And then if we can get into kind of our final stretch here of the episode here, if you could change one thing about the misconception of training for Boston, what would that be, Shana?
A lot of people think you need to train on hills, which you do, but you really need to train on the downhill. It's not just the uphill. Because Boston really is a rolling course. Even though the first 16 miles is a net descent, it's like, and I know people that are listening can't hear, but I'm like with my hand, I mean, it's like this, but as you're going down on a diagonal, you're still doing a lot of the rolling in the diagonal. That makes sense. So there are still some climbs, even in the first 16 miles. And then the 4 Newton Hills, I've run this course during training. Granted, I started in Natick, so I was already at like mile 10 of the Boston course. So when I got to the Newton Hills, I'd only run 6 miles before getting to the hills. I didn't even notice the hills. Like that's how they're not big hills. It's the timing. It's, after running downhill and running 16 miles, those 4 hills are put in the worst spot of a marathon. And you have great recovery in between each hill. There's nice downs in between of the hills. But I would say training on a downhill course for Boston is just as important as incorporating uphill training in your during training.
Okay, great tip for those that are going to be tackling this course in the future. And what about you, Lu?
Actually, very similar along the same line, because Boston special is infamous for the Heartbreak Hill at mile 21. Yeah, the hill itself is not that bad for people who's living in the city area, but yeah, it's where the location it is. But the thing is that people get quad issues after the hills, and that's if you need to train downhill, you want to run slow, you want to keep practice the cadence when you speed up the cadence when you go down, and doing those eccentric workouts, those all help. And also because the first half is downhill, if you run too fast, you don't feel it until after the Heartbreak Hill. So that's why, so Boston, you definitely need pacing strategy. The first downhill you control, the last downhill, so that in the last downhill you can speed up.
Okay. Yeah. So pacing. From what I heard there is, train those downhills in your training and make sure you're getting that leg turnover. So increasing your cadence, right? Your steps per minute as you're going down your hills, friends, making sure you're not turning the brakes on essentially too much, right? As you're going down those hills. So yeah, thanks so much, guys, for sharing kind of your tips. And I'm very excited to actually announce, Shauna, we're going to announce this. We got a little special announcement for a little Spark Stiletto running collab. Do you want to share the announcement that we're going to be having coming out?
So Dwayne and I of Spark Healthy Runner are going to collaborate on some stiletto running Spark apparel.
Yes.
So we're together and we're going to work on some apparel together.
Awesome. So we'll get out some merch there, some common sayings that you've heard on this podcast before, some of our kind of principles that we foundational principles that we believe in, and Shana does some amazing apparel. If you haven't checked out her work yet, if you just go to stilettorunning.com, you can see all of her amazing gear there. I know Coach Whitney is a huge fan. She loves the leggings. She tells me like every time I meet with her, and we do our kind of, we meet like on a weekly basis or every other week, kind of talking about projects and things. And she's always mentioning your name. And you do have a nice little healthy discount for a healthy runner community of 20% off if you guys use the promo code healthy runner at checkout. That's stilettorunning.com. So you guys get a little discount there, and you can check out all of the cool apparel there. And then stay tuned for our launch of our future Spark Stiletto running apparel as well. So Shana, where could most people connect with you? I kind of teased your Instagram before, mentioned your website, but if people want to learn more about you and your journey, whether it's running, whether it is your amazing apparel business, where can they reach out to you?
Instagram, it's the best place. All the same handle everywhere, Stiletto Running. Also, I have a Facebook page, Stiletto Running, and like you said, the website, stilettorunning.com. You can always email me there. I'm always on my phone, so DM on Instagram. That's always a good way to catch me as well.
Yes. So make sure you check that out, and I'll drop all those links in the show notes. And you guys know where you can find Coach Lu. He is one of our admins for our Healthy Runner Facebook community, our group. He's one of our coaches in our coaching program who's doing some amazing work at getting his athletes PRs and feeling stronger, and, kind of testing their fortitude and, what they have in them to hit some, goals that they didn't think they'd be able to accomplish. So you can catch Coach Lu there, as well as Instagram. We'll have his handles in the show notes as well. Anything else, Lu, that I didn't mention?
Yeah, just find me on Instagram and my Facebook.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, guys, this has been fun. This was like such short notice, but I honestly was like a kid in a candy store last week, like tracking you guys, and was just so excited about it. Loved seeing all of the posts of everyone who was running it, all the posts from Instagram, people who ran it, and I definitely had some FOMO. So I wanted to get you guys on the show to kind of get that insider's perspective of, a lot of your journeys might be similar to many people running, whether they're similar at this point in time, or who knows, in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? You guys could be where Shana is in her running journey, or where Lu is in his running journey. So you guys, you never know what is possible. Actually, as I mentioned, I was in Philly this weekend. I got my new mug here. Coach Cat would like this. It's a little Rocky mug. And on the back of it, it says, "It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." Right. And that's what we need to do in our running. We're always moving forward. So I love that quote. So I had to get the mug, get my little green tea in there. So guys, thank you so much again for coming on. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I love that quote. That's a good one.
Yes, yes. And as always, guys, thank you for listening. Whether you're catching this on the Spark Your Training YouTube channel, Healthy Runner Facebook group. If you guys are watching the replay, type in replay. Let me know you caught the video version, or if you're listening on the podcast and you're crushing your run right now, we were hopefully keeping you entertained and not too bored during your long run. And I always appreciate you guys for listening to the podcast each and every week. I love seeing the downloads. I love seeing your recommendations, your reviews. If you haven't reviewed, shameless plug, drop a little review. If you've been listening to multiple episodes, you're getting some value, so other runners can be able to find this content. I greatly appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys. As always, let's stay active, let's stay healthy, and let's just keep on running. Until next time.